Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Nutmegs and These Lads podcast. Today we've got a lot of stuff happening recently in the world of football this week, all building up to the Champions League final this weekend, which will be done on this podcast on YouTube as a live watch along, so feel free to tune in for that. But first thing, this episode here, I've got this here Barcelona shirt, and you might be wondering, why have you got this here? What's so special about a Barcelona shirt? Because Barcelona are not only absolute mugs, they have been absolutely mugged. Now you might be wondering, what I mean by that? And every time, for those of us who use Instagram as football fans, we always have that one Fabrizio Romano tweet or post, and it's like a here we go for a player signing, and it's like the way of saying the transfer window is officially open. I think a few years ago back it was Erling Haaland who he announced, he's going to City. I think the last season it was probably Martin Zubamendi going to Arsenal, because I remember seeing that, and I see that signing, it's like a big signing going to a big club, and I see it and I'm like, yep, the transfer window is definitely open now. Here's the thing though, I think we've got our one for this year, and I saw it this morning and I was there were two signings, to be fair. One was interesting but still confused me, and the other one had me absolutely flabbergasted. The interesting one was Andy Robertson to Tottenham, and I think a lot of people knew that was going to happen because I think there was a verbal agreement in place for him to go to Tottenham if they stayed in the Premier League. I think it was the same situation with Marcus Senesi at Bournemouth. So I think that's interesting. But Andy Robertson going to Tottenham, that's going to be an interesting one. Interesting how the fans will see him and how he'll do there. But the flabbergasting signing is Anthony Gordon to Barcelona for 70 million on a 300 grand a week contract. Have they lost their minds? Like, I don't know why on earth they would sign Anthony Gordon, of all people. I know there's probably going to be Newcastle fans and other England fans out there who think that Anthony Gordon is a really good player. But is he a £70 million player? No, he's not. And to pay him 300 grand a week as well, when arguably your biggest focus has got to be signing a number 9 to replace Robert Lewandowski, it makes no sense. It genuinely shocks me. It looks like a FIFA career mode transfer. It looks like one of those transfers that you go on FIFA career mode and it's just a random transfer. It makes no sense, and it's purely been done because of AI bots in the game. It looks like one of those transfers, and I don't know why they've done that when they claim to not have £26 million for Marcus Rashford. That's all they had to pay, and Marcus Rashford could have been them, and he would have probably not been on 300 grand a week. And out of nowhere, Barcelona have just pulled out 70 million Great British pounds to go and buy him and give him a 300 grand a week contract when they couldn't even get Rashford. Now, obviously, due to it's subjective, but I think that Rashford's better than Anthony Gordon. He's definitely, in the last season, he has been. Anthony Gordon, he's had some good moments. He scored scored a fair few in the Champions League. You know, he scored four in one game, and credit to him for doing that. You know, I believe now he's Newcastle United's all-time top goal scorer in the Champions League. So, yeah, you can give him credit, obviously, but 70 million. It made no sense that they're gonna buy him. And let's face it, he'll probably be a backup player. Like, you think Barcelona, they're still going to sign a striker, okay? Anthony Gordon's not going to play in the striker. They're not going to play another, like, Rafinha or Lamine Yamal up top, you know? Lamine and Rafinha, they're on the wings. They're going to sign a striker. They have to. Because they got rid of Lewandowski and they're not going to buy Rashford permanently. Alright, unless they want to keep Ferran Torres in there, that's fine. But are you honestly telling me that you're willing to fork out £70 million on a bang average mid-table Premier League team's winger, who's a good player, but you're willing to pay 70 million for him and give him 300 grand a week when you're meant to be in a financial crisis? And he might just sit on the bench. It doesn't make sense. But, you know, football is getting to the days now where we're gonna see some random transfers, you know? We're gonna see players do interesting moves, you know. We've seen it a lot in the last few years, you know. Victor Osimhen going to Galatasaray. No one would have predicted that. No one would have predicted it when he went on loan, let alone a permanent deal, and look where it's at now. So, we've seen weird transfers before. But this... I've said this before. Big clubs, they need to realise that they're big clubs. And there's not much bigger clubs than Barcelona. You're Barcelona. You've clearly got money, as shown by your actions. You could honestly sign any player, almost any player you wanted in world football, and you chose Anthony Gordon. It's madness. But yeah, we wait until I think Barcelona officially announce the transfer, and we see how he gets on in pre-season, you know. We don't know what he's going to do, how he's going to do. But yeah, I think give it a few months into the season. I have a feeling he's going to play a little bit for England at the World Cup, Anthony Gordon. Because, I mean, aside from him, I don't know who they're going to play in the left-back role. But yeah, I think he might play a bit for England. And a lot of headlines, him going into the World Cup will be on that transfer. But yeah, it is what it is. Let's change gears now to Crystal Palace winning the Europa League. Big night for Crystal Palace because compared to many other clubs, they are, like in England, you know, your Manchester Uniteds, your Liverpools, your Cities, they're not as big of a club. And I think what they've done in recent years, how Oliver Glasner came in halfway through a season and he got them really firing, you know. Like I remember even he beat Man United 4-0 at home. And granted, Man United were awful in that game. And I watched that game, the 4-0. I literally felt no passion watching that game. That was like the first time I watched Man United, and I felt no passion. I just didn't care. Like, that's what Oliver Glasner did to me. And he did it with players like Michael Elise and that, who he went on to sell. You know? He sells Michael Elise, and arguably the team gets better. And that feels crazy to say. Because you look at Michael Olise now, what he's done, what Crystal Palace could have had, you know, you'd think that the team would be going backwards, and it looks like they went forwards, they won the FA Cup. I think they finished higher in the league table than they did the previous year. He got Eberechi Eze and Jean-Philippe Mateta going forward. He got a good, we've seen Ruben Amorim struggle with the back three and the wing backs, but Oliver Glasner, he got it spot on. He turned Tyrick Mitchell into a great one. He honestly has turned Daniel Munoz into probably like top three. Maybe not so much this season now, but like last season, I could definitely say it. One of like the top three left backs in the Premier League. And I remember watching him in the FA Cup final, Daniel Munoz, and he was lethal. The way he went up against Man City, the way he took on the players, the way he looked to go forward and still did his defensive duties, like, great player, Daniel Munoz. And I really wanted United to sign him in that summer. Obviously they didn't. But, it is what it is. But yeah, Oliver Glasner now is leaving Crystal Palace. And I don't know how many Crystal Palace fans are going to watch this podcast, because it's still in its growing times, still in the early access period, but I genuinely, if there's any Crystal Palace players or fans or anything like that would find this podcast, I want to know, is Oliver Glasner your greatest ever manager? Like, he's only been at the club for 3 years, but the fact that he's come in and he's won an FA Cup, a Community Shield, and a European trophy, I mean, you've got to give him credit. He's got to be up there. Like, the way he's conducted Crystal Palace after, they got booted out of the Europa League for multi-club ownership reasons, or whatever it was. The way he conducted Crystal Palace, you have to give him credit for. And yeah, wherever he goes next, we don't know. I was interested in him coming to United, to be fair, but he seems to have favoured Michael Carrick, which I'm not mad about. I do like Michael Carrick, but Oliver Glasner, that means that there's, to be fair, another good manager on the market. Who could get a decent job. I wouldn't think that. I mean, yeah, I don't. It's raised some eyebrows, Jose Mourinho going to Real Madrid. But if I was Florentino Perez and a fan came up to me and he said, "Hey, bring Oliver Glasner into the club," I would have said, "Are you out of your mind?" Because, do I think he can maybe go to Real Madrid and do a job there? Probably not. But, there's a number of free managerial roles in Serie A. Maybe he could do a bit there, Could he maybe go to a team like Dortmund or something like that in Germany? Yeah, maybe he could. Could he go to another Premier League side? One that's could be chase a manager, like Bournemouth, if he went to Bournemouth. Again, maybe. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Oliver Glasner does next. But Crystal Palace, I think they definitely deserve the Europa Conference League. Good players. They've been the best team in that competition, and that raises the point that we all talk about it, I think, in football, how these European competitions, the Europa League and the Europa Conference League, how much they highlight the dominance, the absolute dominance of English football in the financial world, and also in the way of the quality of football in general. We in the last 2 years, we've had 4 editions of the Conference League and the Europa League, and they've all been won by English teams. Now, financially, they're definitely much stronger. But here's the thing. Is it purely finance that is getting these clubs forward, because every league has got its way of playing. Italy's got the very defensive style that they all play. All the teams in Italy play it. The national team plays it. Spain has the well-known tiki-taka technical side of the game. England is more of a strong and physical and fast and just get the basics right league. That's what English football kind of is like. And you look at that and you think, well, hang on, if our football was the best, then we'd have more trophies in our upwards of 100 years of playing football than just one World Cup in the 1960s. And so, can you say that that's the reason why? Like, is it England has the best football? Or is it financial power that draws in good players? Like, no doubt about it, the Premier League is clear on all of the clubs in, like, La Liga and Bundesliga on how much they invest in their clubs. But that is how football works when it becomes a business. And that's the sad thing about the game. Because you look at that, the Premier League is where it is because a group of people came in and they say, hey, we're going to put a bunch of money into this league, make it this big, big league, the greatest football league in the world, and everyone's going to watch it, everyone's going to love it. And you put the money in, and as a result, you get exactly what you wanted, you got the best football league in the world. The thing is, all it takes, though, is someone from La Liga or the Bundesliga to say, okay, we're going to give a bunch of money and we're going to up the money we give to these clubs, give them financial lucrativity like the Premier League has, and we can compete. They might well be able to from there. But at the same time, the Premier League is where it is because someone decided to invest good money into the club. To all the clubs. And when you look at it, it's a good thing and a bad thing because you've got the best league in the world. Someone took the money out of their own pocket to make this league and all its teams the best in the world. But at the same time, it just proves that football is becoming a business, and it's becoming almost every season down to who has the most money. Like, going into this next season, I've looked at what teams are in the Conference League this year. And I know Brighton's in it from England, but, like, Atalanta's in it, Getafe's in it, I believe Freiburg's in it, just off the Europa League final. I think it's Monaco from France that's playing in it. So, do I think Brighton... I'll be honest, I look at that league and I think that Crystal Palace had more chance of winning this year's edition of the Conference League than Brighton have of winning it next year. But if the Conference League is won by Brighton and the Europa League is won by Bournemouth and Sunderland, then, which again it might not, I look at those teams and I think, I think that Villa or Nottingham Forest had more of a chance of winning the Europa League this year than Sunderland or Bournemouth will have of winning it next year. That's my opinion. That's what I think. But that's the thing. If next year's Europa trophies are won by English teams, then it's gonna display a clear difference. Because if a mid-table team like Fulham or Brentford finally qualifies for the Europa League or the Europa Conference League, those big celebrations, that we see on the final day of the league season because they've made it, they might as well celebrate like they've won the trophy already then. So yeah, And again, that's no disrespect to Palace, you know. They've won the trophy and they've won the tournament because in that tournament this year, they've been the best team and they deserve it. But the thing is, if this keeps going on, it highlights a financial inequality for teams in England. It's the thing. Some things have got to be done about that. You know, a lot of teams, for example, the Club World Cup, how much money that generates. You know, well, lots of clubs are going to get big money for playing in that tournament, and they get more for how far they go. But again, you look at the season just gone, the Club World Cup, that got won by the English team, Chelsea. So all that big money has already gone back to the English teams. But yeah, at the moment, that's just the way it is in football, and it's probably going to be like that for like 5 or so years. But yeah, but that doesn't mean that whoever's got the most money is going to dominate, you know? It can be a case of the football. You know, if the football is better, then it will triumph over money. If the coaching and the players and the work that those players put in, if they are better than the money, it will show. But yeah, so to top it off, it shows inequality in a way, but it is what it is. Again, if Spanish teams and the French teams and the German teams, if they want to win the Europa trophies, you just got to play against the English teams and you've got to win. You can win, you've got to do it. So yeah, congratulations again to Crystal Palace. Touching on one more thing now. I'll look ahead towards the Champions League final. This weekend, 2 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, we're going to go live and we'll have a live watch along of this Champions League final. I've said a number of times that I don't think that it's as one-sided as everyone's saying it's going to be. You know, I've watched PSG live this season, and to be fair, they did play somewhat of a backup squad, but like, still they looked poor. They looked cocky. They looked like Enrique seemed like Enrique was in a mindset of we've already won Ligue 1, and they obviously did win Ligue 1, but they hadn't won it yet. You know, but that cockiness that they had, if Luis Enrique gives into it again, Arsenal have a swing. I won't be mad, to be fair, if Arsenal win the Champions League. And I won't be mad if PSG win it, you know? I don't think it's until this semi-final run where they actually got to the semi-final and then everyone's like, just wait a second, what if PSG went back-to-back in the Champions League? Because I favoured Bayern Munich to go and win it. You know? And they didn't. They got beaten by PSG. And that's almost got to be a way of saying that this PSG team know how to do it. They know how to plan out their season, what they need to do. Obviously, they've had a bit of help, you know, from Ligue 1, rescheduling fixtures, which I'm not a fan of. I think you've just got to play through it, to be fair, Ligue 1. I think Ligue 1 probably do pick their favourites, you know, they want French football on the map. So let's help PSG, you know, win the Champions League again. I'm not a fan of that. But at the same time, it doesn't matter how bad you've been in the league phase. Because I know they did lose a couple of games, PSG. And they got through in the playoffs, you know. They beat Monaco. then they beat Chelsea, they beat Liverpool, they beat Bayern. That's a very good run. And now they're in the final against Arsenal. Arsenal have had definitely much easier run, but again, they've made it to the final. You know, they might not have beaten Barcelona, but they beat the team who beat Barcelona. So, yeah, do I favour any team? Am I going to be biased to any team? Do I have a favourite that I want? No. I'm actually very glad for that, though, because it means I'm going to be watching this game as an out-and-out neutral. And, yeah, it should be a fun watch-along, you know? It'll be a fun game to watch, hopefully. I've already watched the FA Cup final this year. It was an absolute snooze fest. Very much hoping that this one's better. It's a Champions League final, you know. Arsenal looking for their first, PSG looking for their second. And that's funny to say. Like, you know, if you told me back in 2010, maybe even 2011 or 2013, because, like, you know, that's when Arsenal somewhat started to go downhill a bit. PSG slowly was starting to go up a bit, you know, after the QSI money came in. But, yeah, if you told me back in 2013, so 13 years ago, that the Champions League final in Budapest would have been PSG and Arsenal, you wouldn't believe it. But that's football, you know. Lots and lots of things this season. You could have said someone a year ago that this year Sunderland will be playing Europa League football, and they think you would be dreaming. But here we are. That's the beauty of football, though, isn't it? You know, anything can happen. It's anyone's game. And as for who I think will win in Budapest, if I had to make a prediction, I would say a 2-1 win for PSG. Arsenal go ahead, PSG score 2 goals to come back and win the game 2-1, just like it was in the Stade de France 20 years ago. That's how I see this game going, to be fair. So, yeah. With that, we're going to call another episode of the Nutmeg Zone These Sides podcast. Thank you very much for watching, and I will hopefully see you Sunday morning or Saturday night, wherever you are in the world, for the watch along of the Champions League final. So, until then, laters.